still talking.
Are we now live? Okay.
So should I be worried that the screen just shifted from
Eric to the host.
showing the room and,
Well, the little room is up there now.
Right.
So there's no
Made
why.
Eric the host.
And
He's running.
does anybody know if we're streaming, live streaming, is that what it's called?
We are live streaming.
Okay. All right.
When I stopped my video, the screen switched back to the room as the main focus.
So the way it's appearing on the live stream is that we can just see the room. So when you come on the screen, just mute Eric. Sorry. When you come on, Eric, it's just in the rooms, I mean, in the monitors in the room itself. So I think we should be all set.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. And so when our guest comes on, will there be 3 screens up there or will the room disappear? Although I guess it doesn't make any difference.
It will be 3.
Okay. All right. So should we invite our guest? All right.
he's waiting to get online.
I don't know. Is he with us, Gil?
Not yet.
Okay. I hope everybody had a chance to do their homework.
Sure.
Most of the way through.
25 of 34.
That's about where I am, page 24.
It's mostly charts that we've already seen. So simple to.
I'm catching up on my school email better than I do when I'm at school.
What comment?
They did ask a question.
Where's the delay?
2 weeks away.
2-week delay. He called me and said that, I mean, they didn't get started right away and all that kind of stuff. And he said they were almost there, but they needed some fine tuning. And I said, it's better to ask for a delay of 2 weeks than to send out something that isn't. So,
I mean, it's not going to affect us because we can work on it.
right,
So
Yeah, and
we'll get back in January.
the only reason we put October 1st deadline was because we thought we might have an October session that we could act on if we wanted to.
yeah, so they'll have it out. They've been meeting with a lot of people. Oh, I know what it was. They hadn't worked closely with the advisory committee yet to make sure that all the details were worked out. But there's a guy in our area who's very excited, and James has been meeting with him. Our guest isn't with us yet.
Not yet.
Eric, have you been in contact with Hank Kim this morning? You're muted.
Sorry, not this morning. I chatted with him briefly via email on Monday. I am shooting him an email right now.
Okay, thanks.
And I did email him to update him on the technical issues. Okay, so he's ready for us. Yes, it's coming in.
Good morning, Mr. Kim. Thank you so much for being with us. I apologize for our delay in getting going here. We've had a few technical glitches that we've been ironing out this morning, but we are very happy to have you with us. We do have copies of the remarks that you have submitted, and we would welcome you to share your thoughts with the task force now.
Great, thank you. Hopefully everybody can hear me okay. When I was listening, it broke up a little bit, but hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yes.
Can you confirm that you can hear me? Great.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It really is a pleasure to be speaking with you today. Normally I would begin by apologizing for not being there in person, but as it's been well stated since March of 2020, COVID changed everything, and virtual presentation is almost the norm now. So it is great being with you on the Zoom platform. What I'd like to do today is just speak a little bit about some of the research that NCPERS has done relative to public pension plans. Specifically about the impact that public pension plans and its participants have on a state, as well as sort of a new concept that we're working on relative to whether pension plans are sustainable. And I think, right now, one of the metrics that's used to determine whether pension plans are sustainable is the funded status, or the funding ratio, whether the pension plan is at 100%, 120% funded, or at 70, or whatever the percentage figure is. We certainly feel that is an important tool, but we feel that just like any other diagnostic tool, that it comes with some shortfalls, and that there may be a better way of measuring sustainability. And we are coming up with a concept now, soon to be fleshed out and published in the coming weeks and months, about what we've termed sustainability measure, meaning how does the pension plan's funded status compare to sort of the economic capacity of the plan sponsor. And we feel that this new measure, along with the traditional measurements of funded status and contribution levels, et cetera, can give a fuller and better picture of whether pension plans are sustainable. So that's a quick roadmap of where what I'd like to talk to you about over the next several minutes. And then I'll pause for some questions or comments and answer anything else that you may have. So let me begin with a quick introduction. My name is Hank Kim. I'm the Executive Director and Counsel for the National Conference on Public Employee Retirement Systems. We are long name, so as is typical, we go by sometimes our acronym, NCPERS. And we are the largest trade association for state and local pension plans. The vast majority of our members are based in the United States, but we do have a handful of members up in Canada, as well as members in Australia. And through our members, counting about 500 plans throughout the country in Canada and Australia, including the Vermont Employees Retirement System, we represent about 11 million beneficiaries and 15 million active public servants, including, but not certainly not limited to, firefighters, law enforcement officers, teachers, judiciary employees, and elected officials. And let me be clear where we are. So we, as I said, we are a trade association for state and local pension plans. We do advocate on behalf of pension plans. So we advocate at the federal level as well as at the state level. So we are true believers in the power and the benefit of defined benefit pension plans. As a trade association, beyond advocacy, we also conduct research to find out more about our sector, and we'll be talking a little bit more about the two research that we've conducted that I think are particularly relevant for this task force. And then we provide education, and education certainly to the pension plans that are members of NCPERS, but particularly since the great financial crisis of 2008, 2009, we've expanded our definition of who we feel ought to be educated about state and local pension plans. And so we term the broader audience as stakeholders of state and local pension plans. And so obviously stakeholders include the plans, the staff, the trustees, but it also includes the participants, it includes the plan sponsors, it includes the employee associations, retiree groups, unions, as well as taxpayer organizations. And we feel that the broader the reach, any contact that you have with the pension plan deserves being educated relative to the benefits and costs of state and local pension plans. So, yeah, I wanted to be clear. We are advocates of state and local pension plans, and we feel that pension plans are not, some gratuity or gift that a state or locality, confers onto its employees and its retirees. Unlike in the private sector, state and local pension plans, so public sector pension plans, as we all know, are contributory plans, meaning that participants have skin in the game. They make regular contribution into those pension plans. And so as a result, pension plans are earned. They are earned both in terms of the actual money that participants put into the pension plans throughout their careers, as well as recognizing that it is deferred compensation, so that employees during their working years probably take a little bit less in terms of take-home pay, recognizing that the plan sponsor, the state, the county, or the locality is putting the difference into the pension plan. So let me just say that and again, I'm sure you know about this, but I do want to dot the I's and cross the T's and make sure we level set before I go into the research. But I think we all know that pension plans for individual participants and beneficiaries is very modest. So the average 2020 was just under 29,000. And I'm referring to page 3 on 28,852, which is about the $24,000 a month. The average in Vermont is even less at just under 22,000. So while these are modest benefits, retirement, and so we feel that a pension plan for state and local employees, again, because they are earned and because they are so.
Mr. Kim, I think we lost you.
Yeah, we lost him. Mr.
Hello,
Kim,
I
you
think I lost you for a while. Is that correct?
You froze for a moment and then disappeared altogether. Are you having internet instability on your end?
I'm not sure. It shows pretty solid bars on my end. Unfortunately, I am at a hotel. Can you still hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah, I'm getting a signal that's saying my internet connection is unstable. Give me a second. Let me try to do. No, that's not going to work. Well, I apologize. Let me just try to power through it. As we said, it's COVID, and we got to just sort of roll with the punches, as it were.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm sorry. Can you just tell me where I lost you?
Right after the,
He can't hear you.
right after the national and Vermont rates.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I didn't really lose you too much. So given sort of the unstable internet that I guess I'm experiencing, let me just cut to the chase so that we can minimize any further disruption. So the first study I want to talk about is Unintended Consequences. It's a study that we've been publishing since 2016. We do it biannually. So the most recent one. We started doing it in 2018, and the most recent one we did it in last year. And basically, what it does is it builds economic models to figure out what is the economic impact of pension plans in each state. But beyond that, it also measures the revenue attributable to the pension plan for each state. So when I say revenue, obviously I mean tax receipts from the plan as well as from the participants in the plan. So, building sort of an economic impact model is not anything new. A number of other organizations have done similar research relative to the impact of the spending of retirees on a particular state. What we've done here is a little bit, we've built on that sort of base. We've used a slightly different models in terms of the economic impact of retiree spending. But beyond that, we've also added a layer of the economic impact the plan itself delivers to the state based on its investments. So as we all know, pension plans are big pools of capital. As they deploy that capital and invest in the United States globally, there is economic impact, and we can trace that to particular states as well. So we measure in terms of economic impact the spending of participants, as well as sort of the economic engine that's generated by the investments of the plans themselves. And then we take that and take it one more step further, and from there, figure out the tax revenue, the tax receipt of both of those elements to a particular state. So what I'd like to do now is I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully this will work. And what you're seeing here is that analysis for Vermont. So as I said, the studies were conducted in 2018 and then 2020. However, the data that we use are, there's always a 2-year lag in that. So the 2018 report used 2016 data, and the 2020 report used 2018 data. So what you, So what you can see here is that in terms of total assets of all the pension plans in Vermont, the assets under management increased over the 2 years from $4.1 billion to increased over 500 million to $4.65 billion. The total number of pension checks issued by the pension plans in Vermont has also increased by $50 billion from 340 million to 390 billion. In terms of economic impact of the assets that were of the plans in aggregate also increased from 22 million to 30 million. And then the economic impact of the participants. So, when participants receive their checks, they go out and dine at the local diner, they spend it on Main Street. That also increased by almost $125 million. So it went from 854 million to 997 million. So when you add both the economic impact of the assets that are deployed as well as spending in 2016, that economic impact, the state of Vermont, was $876 million. And in 2018, it was just over $1 billion. What does that mean in terms of revenue for the state? So in revenue, in 2016, it was $165 million. And in 2018, it was $191 million. In terms of how that balances out in other words, the contribution, the state's contribution to the pension plan was $153 million, meaning the net revenue impact of pension plans in the state of Vermont was a positive $12 million in 2016. In 2018, the contribution by the state was 204. Sorry, I guess I lost you again.
That's quite all right. Most of us have a paper copy of the testimony in front of us, and
Great.
so perhaps we'll have an easier time communicating with you if you're not screen sharing. You were just talking about that difference between 2016 and 2018 in terms of net impact.
Correct. So obviously, we can all do the simple arithmetic, and so the state of Vermont in the 2 years went from 2016 went from positive 12 million to negative 13 million. So a swing of 25 million. So on first blush, it seems as if the trend line isn't good in Vermont because you went from positive 12 million to negative 13 million. However, when we scratch the surface and dig a little bit, the reason for that negative 13 is because Vermont actually did the proper thing and added additional contributions to the pension plans to pay down the ratio of underfunding. And as a result, because Vermont did the right thing, it went from positive 12 million in terms of revenue derived by pension plans and the contribution to negative 13. So I think that, again, on the surface, as a headline, it doesn't look good. But when you dig in on that, regardless of whether you're actually positive or negative, the real message here is that the contribution to pension plans are substantially subsidized by the actual economic engine that pension plans are, and the revenue derived by Vermont from that economic activity. So even though in 2018, Vermont contributed $13 million more into the pension plan than the tax revenue it derives directly from the pension plan, the net effect is it's substantially subsidized. So, I think the message here is that, pension plans are economic engines. They are centers of revenue generators, tax revenue for the state, and it should be very careful as it looks at, ways of cutting costs to the pension plan, because ultimately any cost on the front end to the pension plan will likely have a negative impact to the state in terms of revenue coming back to the state. And then, so that's the first one. The second one I want to talk about is sustainability study. And
Kim, can I interrupt you for a moment? I just have a question, and I don't want to go too far beyond your first point here before I clarify this for myself and possibly for folks following along from home. I think that we can all agree that the reason for a healthy public pension system goes beyond any economic benefit that it might have to the state, that it's actually just a fundamentally important part of how we compensate the folks who do these very important jobs for us. I'm just curious about your line in the graph here that is called taxpayer contribution. Is that based, if you said it, I didn't hear it. Is that based on what the ADEC payment was for those given years?
Yes. So we got that data not directly from the plans themselves, but from what the Census Bureau reported in those years. So generally, the Census Bureau sends out surveys to state and local pension plans. They respond to that. Among the survey questions is what has been the contribution from the state, and the assumption is that it is either the full or partial amount of the ADEC.
Okay, I'm just curious because there have been a number of years where the contribution has been over and above the ADEC, and I just wondered if that negative 13 million in terms of net impact was due to the fact that our ADEC has been growing for other factors other than a healthy pension system, or if it is based on one of those years when we had some extra revenue, so we put it towards the ADEC.
That's exactly right. And maybe when I was really teasing that out, I might have broken up. But yes, that's exactly right. That in 2018, the reason Vermont was at negative 13 million is because Vermont did the right thing, that it added more, during the good economic times and revenue times, it contributed more to the pension plan to pay off the historic legacy costs. And that's why in 2018, you're at negative 13 million versus positive 12 million in 2016. You're absolutely right.
So I appreciate you expressing it in that way, that that puts a judgment on the Vermont doing the right thing. But without getting us too far down an unnecessary rabbit hole, I would just point out that during these years when the state of Vermont has been doing the right thing, our unfunded liability has continued to grow, and that's part of the reason why we're here today. So while I think there are many more benefits to a healthy public pension system than simply looking at the net economic benefit to the state, I think it's important for us to recognize that negative number could in fact be due to the fact that our unfunded liability has grown at the same time that we have been continually paying in the ADEC or more. So that's just a flag, and I don't want to take us on a tangent because I know you did have a second point that you were about to get to. So thank you.
No, and I appreciate the comment and the question. Thank you so much. And actually, I think it leads very well. It's almost like a planted question, as it were, but it leads us very well to the next topic of sustainability. And as I was saying at the beginning, the sustainability pension plans, right now are largely measured by, the funded status, the ratio of the assets divided by the amount of obligation to yield us a funded status of whatever the percentage is, and so I think, as I said at the beginning, there are certainly, it's a tool. There are data to be derived from the funded status of pension plans. But what we felt for a while is that there was something critically missing in sort of that two-dimensional analysis of funded status of a pension plan, which is, what is the economic capacity of the plan sponsor, and can we find some sort of ratio or a data set that determines whether the economic capacity of the state or county or locality, given where they are, whatever the funded state is, could that be sustainable? And we think we found something, and we're in the process of developing it. And as I said, our hope is to have this latest research published in the next weeks, or certainly before the end of the year. But what we try to do is, calculate the economic capacity, and we use personal income of whatever geographic area or political area that we're trying to measure, whether it's a state, county, or city, because we think personal income is a good indicator, a good hallmark for the economic capacity of this, again, the jurisdiction. We've had conversations of what, should we use GDP or GNP? For economic reasons beyond my capabilities, but we've had economists and others debate this. They've come to the conclusion that personal income is the better choice. And so the long and short of it is, and if you'll go down to page 8 and look at figure 1, I'd like to just walk through this concept here. And what it is we've taken a look at the funded status of Vermont over the last 13 years. or 15 years, excuse me. And the red line represents sort of a theoretical, just simple, liabilities divided by the economic capacity of the state of Vermont. And that's just above, the 0.0040 mark. And if the blue line essentially either parallels that or is underneath that, or if it's above that and the slope is on a downward trajectory, we think that's very sustainable. And obviously here in this case, in Vermont right now, for at least the last, since 2012, it's been on an upward trajectory. So for the last 4 years. And that upward trajectory represents, a deficit of about $253 million. Large number, even for a state like Vermont. Our point here is that in order for the blue line to start having either a parallel or a slightly negative slope relative to that red line, which is the definition of sustainable, that that number doesn't, that $253 million doesn't need to be addressed immediately. That over a gradual period of time, if again Vermont does the right thing and adds to its ADEC, that steadily that the trend line, the blue line, will start having a negative slope, and will in the interim parallel the red line, and then go down and eventually meet that red line. And I apologize, I know I'm rushing through it because I'm getting messages on my side saying that my internet connection is not stable. But so to your question, as Vermont makes, or if Vermont continues to make a little bit additional contribution to the ADEC going forward, particularly during good economic times, the sustainability of Vermont pension plans will be assured, and the unfunded liability, which again is a measure that has a proper role, but it shouldn't be looked at solely. That again, once we've come out with our sustainability evaluation, that should be a component that should be added to all the other measurement tools that Vermont and other plan sponsors use to measure the sustainability of pension plans. So let me, at this point, just pause and see if there are any questions or comments from the task force.
Mr. Kim,
Sorry, Eric. I have a question. Just one of the things I was wondering, Hank, is on the first page, it mentions that NC-PERS represents the Vermont State Employees Retirement System. Do you also represent the teacher system as well?
No, the teacher system is not a member. Okay, but if you have specific questions about the teacher system, I think we can, based on the data that we have, we could certainly speak based on the data that's been provided.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes. Eric, did you have a question?
I did. Mr. Kim, thank you for joining us here today and adding NC-PERS perspective into our work here. The big takeaway from me from the Unintended Consequences study, which was fantastic, by the way, is the power of pension systems in actually driving and creating economic activity. So, you know, as we look at the delta between contributions and the economic activity created, I wasn't, you know, whether it's positive 12 or negative 13, what I found interesting there is that we often think about the cost of a pension system as that full contribution amount. And in fact, when you adjust it for the economic activity created, the cost is either much less in the case of the negative 13, or can even be you know, an economic benefit. So I was just curious as to, you know, we have some work out in front of us where we can invest more into the pension system, or we can, you know, make adjustments to what goes out into the community, and how should we balance that? You know, is a dollar invested in the system a dollar well spent, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, from our perspective, it certainly is. And, you know, what that was one of the points I was trying to underscore. And again, it may have been during the period where I got cut off or where I had unstable connection. But yeah, it's almost pointless to quibble over whether it was positive 12 or negative 13, because even if it's at negative 13, whatever the contributions were, it was substantially subsidized, right? And so effectively, the pension is paying for itself in many instances. And so I think the bottom line, my answer is yes. It seems like the dollar that you put into a pension plan, on average, gives you, well, I was going to say $12 back, but I'm not. But it either gives you a positive return on that dollar, or you know, the contribution made to the plan is subsidized by, you know, practically, you know, a substantial percentage. So yes, I think it's a positive investment.
So I have a question here. I'm trying to figure this out. So your analysis is that if we put in an additional $50 million a year over our ADEC for the next 5 years, we would have the unfunded liability paid down to the point where the debt and income are in sync. But over the past, the unfunded liability has continued to grow, and it keeps growing. So that might take care of what we have right now, but it keeps growing even as we put in more money. And this doesn't, maybe I don't understand this, but this doesn't take into account the demographics, the changing demographics in the state, and the fact that people are retiring and living much longer. And so the normal costs are increasing. So the unfunded liability is going to continue to grow.
Yes, that's a great question. And thank you for that, because it helps me to tease out what our sustainability measurement actually does. So our sustainability measurement isn't saying that your unfunded liability will not grow. In some instances, and based on, you know, the factors you named, it may actually grow among the pension plans in Vermont. What we're saying is, even if it grows, because of the economic growth, that growth in unfunded ratio is still sustainable. So it's like sort of what we said in the written part of the testimony. So let's say, you know, an individual has a mortgage of $200,000. Their income is around mortgage, their annual income is $30,000 a year. Obviously, there is underfunding there. But as the bank evaluates the credit risk of the borrower, if they see that, you know, the likelihood of that borrower, their income's going to grow over the years, you know, because they're in a good job, they perform well, etc. That even though through inflation that the mortgage may grow, that as long as the income growth of that borrower keeps pace with that, then the monthly payments will be affordable for that borrower. And if that borrower is smart and pays a little bit more each month to make their mortgage, you know, instead of a 30-year, be able to pay it off in 28 years, all the better. So what we're trying to say is, yes, we're not saying that the underfunded or the unfunded ratio will not grow. Again, it may grow. What we're trying to measure is that growth sustainable based on the economic capacity and the economic growth capacity of the plan sponsor.
No.
So the challenge that I'm having at this moment is that the mortgage analogy only works so far in this scenario. When those of us who are thinking of the analogy of our household mortgage, we know what we spent on our house when we bought it, and we know that that is a fixed amount, and therefore what we'll be paying is predetermined. But in the scenario that we find ourselves with unfunded liabilities growing because of demographic assumption changes and poor investment performance, essentially the amount that we are paying on our home in this mortgage scenario is growing. And so I guess I'm challenged to agree with your assessment of this way of determining sustainability, because we may have thought we were buying a $200,000 house, and it may in fact be that we are buying an $800,000 house or $1 million house. We just can't predict what the ADEC payment is going to be into the future. So it has become difficult for the general fund to keep up with even the basic ADEC payments, let alone doing the right thing and paying more than the ADEC.
Yeah, and I think all analogies, they do fail at a certain point because it's not exactly the same thing. I guess not to beat a dead horse, but maybe one way of sort of adjusting for and you raise a very good point is, okay, so it's a $200,000 mortgage plus you took out some sort of a HELOC, and now the bank has to analyze, okay, based on the monthly mortgage plus the home equity line of credit, is that sustainable for the borrower? And again, if the borrower's income increases, and then again, so if the state of Vermont, if your economic capacity relative to sort of the growth of the unfunded liability is in step or is better, then again, based on analysis, again, we think that it is sustainable. Again, I think for the task force, for the legislature, for the plan sponsor, as well as the plans and the participants, we feel that they're obviously the contributions that you're making, the funded ratio or unfunded ratio are all tools and metrics you should certainly look at. all we're saying is that there may be at least a third metric that you should look at, which is, again, our sustainability measurement.
I have another question if I may. Mr. Kim, one of our objectives as the task force is to evaluate what any of the recommendations we may make, how those would affect employee recruitment and retention. Do you have any comments on how we should think about those considerations?
Yeah, what I can tell you is that, for state and local employees, a defined benefit pension plan is very important. There are a number of studies, not done by us, but done by AARP and others, who show that, again, state and local employees are slightly different in terms of what motivates them. It's they're not looking to necessarily get rich. They want stability. They want to serve, and they recognize that part of the bargain is that their compensation during the working years may be less than what the market forces would say it is. But they know at the back end that they get a pension plan. So I think pensions are very important. What we do know is from states that have pension plans. So for instance, in Alaska, back in 2006, they closed their defined benefit pension plan. And since then, Alaska, it already had its own set of challenges in terms of recruitment and retention. But essentially what's happening in Alaska is the public safety teachers and other state and local employees, they go up to Alaska to get the first set of training, and then they come back to the Pacific Northwest, to Oregon. Sorry about that. So what I was saying is, what we know is that in Alaska, Alaska has essentially turned into a training center for the rest of the Pacific Northwest states of Washington. Newer employees go up there, get the training, and then apply to the contiguous 48 states because they have better benefits, including pension.
Can you tell us more about who and how the sustainability evaluation is being developed?
Yeah, so it's being authored by our Director of Research, Dr. Michael Kahn, who has a PhD in economics and sociology. It's being vetted by a number of academics, so it's going through peer review right now. That's part of the reason why we haven't published it yet. So it's a fairly rigorous exercise on our part.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I didn't hear that last.
Hello? Thank you for testifying today. So I just had a couple of questions. One is, are you arguing that we should maintain our existing ratios, or we should try to pay them down? I mean, we are on a closed amortization schedule, which by 2038 would fully fund both the teachers and state employee pensions. Are you arguing?
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing. I did not catch that question.
Sure, I'd be happy to repeat it. So,
hello?
we are currently, Vermont currently has a closed amortization schedule, which will pay off our unfunded liabilities by 2038. Are you arguing that we should be on a different tack or do something differently?
No, I don't believe I am. I think, so if I heard the comment correctly, you're on closed amortization, which is scheduled to pay off the unfunded by 2038. So in about the 16 years. I think that's a very responsible way of doing it. Obviously, as I think people are aware, closed amortization is
Oops.
We're cursed today. Welcome back, Mr. Kim. We can see you. Can you hear us?
hello. Yes, I think I'm hearing you now, right? Hello.
Yes.
Okay. I don't know where I got cut off, but I want to be very clear that I think that Vermont is taking the best practices are now on closed amortization, which is good, which is what Vermont is doing. That a target of in about 16 years, 2038 seems very reasonable. So I don't think I'm advocating that Vermont needs to do anything different. I guess all I'm saying is, again, based on ability measurement that, and again, as Vermont does what it's going to do over the next 16 years without, and I'm speculating here, so please take what I say with a grain of salt, but that chart, that last sustainability chart, that as Vermont pays down its legacy costs in a closed amortization period over the next 16 years, that without doing anything further, that the blue line may and seemingly likely will take that negative slope and eventually become parallel and then ultimately come and come close to the red line, the sustainability red line. Hello?
I think
can people hear me?
you got very choppy there. So perhaps if you just shut your video off, that would help, because sometimes that improves
Okay.
audio. And just repeat what you just said, because it was, I think, very hard to hear.
Chat version of this.
Okay, so what I wanted to say was, again, that I am not advocating that Vermont does anything differently, that Vermont, as you said, is on a closed amortization period, which is the standard, the best practice in terms of amortization. That if the target of 2038 in about 16 years of paying that, if that is the case, Hello?
Hi.
Okay. All right. So so if that is the case, I think Vermont is doing what it needs to do to pay off the legacy costs in a responsible manner. This next part, I am very much speculating, so please take what I say with a grain of salt, which is
This part we haven't heard yet.
Maybe you can email us the response.
Yeah, that's what I was. just
I don't
Oh, there you
I
go.
think we should
I
look.
don't think I just someone does not want me to speculate.
The internet's are against you.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I was saying that I don't think anyone wants me to speculate.
We all laughed at that.
Okay. All right, so let me try to get through this. So my speculation, and again, take this with a grain of salt, is that if as Vermont does what it's supposed to do over the next 16 years, without doing anything more, under a sustainability measurement, that I'm speculating that the line will curve, will have a negative slope, and it might not go below the red line, which is what you want.
Okay, so you're not suggesting that we shouldn't maintain our current efforts to fully fund our pensions by 2038?
I am not. No, I think that is an ideal situation. That if you can pay off and become fully funded in 18 years, Vermont certainly gets a gold star.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure.
Any more questions?
So with a few interruptions, we have spent about an hour with you. Are there any other remarks that you'd like to share with us, or pension task force members? Are there any other questions you'd like to ask?
I guess I have one more question that I will put out there, despite our technology issues. I think the unintended consequences study shows the power of pension systems in economic development. It's investments that pay off over the longer term. I think what brings us here today is nearer term fiscal capacity issues. So do you have any thoughts on how we should weigh those two considerations so that we don't sacrifice longer term benefits? We don't incur costs unwittingly upon us. How do we balance the longer term versus the shorter, nearer term?
Yeah, so I guess my response to that is this is certainly that calculus is certainly something that policymakers, that's the policymakers' job and duty, and it's in their wheelhouse. What we can do as a research organization is provide the policymakers with data, with studies, and that type of support for you to make the best decision possible. And again, from our perspective, $1 into a pension plan in many instances pays more than $1 back, and even if it doesn't pay $1 back, the contribution is substantially subsidized by the the revenue that's directly attributable to the pension plan and its participants.
Yep. So unless there are more questions, comments? Oh, Andrew?
I just have one comment that I've been thinking about going through this presentation, and that's, the idea that even a modest pension benefit like we have in Vermont, 31% less than the national, it still has a large economic revenue impact. And so that concept I'm just sitting with right now. I don't think the math is done correctly. 31%.
Yeah.
Look at it, so it is less, but 31 is divided. Gotcha. It didn't bust out my calculator.
All right, well, thank you so much for joining us. We apologize. We had technical difficulties on both ends here. It's good to know we weren't the only ones with technical difficulties. So with that, I guess we'll thank you very much. And if you have any comments that you'd like to forward to us afterwards, please just send them to us and we'll be sure to take them into account.
Will do. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Yep. All right, shall we take a lunch break and see everyone at 1? Does that work? 50? Huh?
1:15?
1:15?
Does that work?
1:15, and everyone will have finished an initial review of the
Yeah.
draft interim report.
Yep.
I have to say